So on today's episode of James on IT, we're going to talk about a new feature in Azure called Azure Local. Let's get into it. Now, at Microsoft Ignite this past month, Microsoft announced a really cool feature called Azure Local. And the beautiful part about Azure Local is it works with a much wider variety of hardware. Essentially, it's bring your own infrastructure and add it into Azure. And it's replacing the old Azure HCI that they had. Essentially, it's a rebranding and expansion. The beautiful part about this is because it's including more drivers, you can use it with anything from small edge servers, as small as like 4 core systems, to large rollouts, and be able to run things such as AVD locally or Kerberos or any other number of services. And it uses all of the standard Azure tooling to do so. So you can roll out infrastructure in a test environment, save your money until you roll it out to the cloud. So this is great for dev environments. It's great for learning. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. Now, what I'm about to show you, these are not my slides. This was actually slides that Microsoft used in their presentation. So I wanted to show you these slides because it gives us a nice overview as we go through this new feature. So let's jump over to our desktop. Again, this is from Microsoft. This is their slides at their presentation that they used. They made this available for download. I wanted to recap some of the things that I thought was particularly cool about its capabilities. So what they're looking at is the ability for distributed infrastructure, but standardized tooling. In other words, edge cases. You need small servers rolled out to be retail stores or disconnected systems. You know, they're giving examples here of like a grocery store, manufacturing center, utilities, things like that. And honestly, just about anybody that uses Azure Cloud that wants something on site or needs something on site or wants to do their testing on site, this is a great resource to do so. And I want to jump across. This is your standard slide talking about the Azure Local. It's across the entire part of Azure, which is cool. And what I like about it, though, is it's tied in with Azure Arc. So as you know, Azure Arc allows you to set up your on-site servers or even servers in other cloud centers to be able to leverage things like Azure policies, Azure management, things like that, and be able to manage your resources through Azure like they are in Azure. Well, with Local, it gives you a step above this. Again, now this is taken from Azure HCI, which was using very specific hardware. It was very centered on, or I should say focused on, enterprise, because these things were expensive. I'll be frank. This used really high-end infrastructure. So for a lot of SMB, it just wasn't practical. And I understand why they started with that, because that probably made them the most money, that gave them the most control, give them a chance to limit the scope so that they could learn more about how they want to bring in Azure Local. But what I think is really nice about this is now that we have Azure Local, it really expands the capability because you can use a much wider variety of hardware and be able to have a full-blown HCI on lower end hardware. So this makes this more available and more accessible for the SMB market. It also gives you the ability to do everything like you're used to, your network security groups, storage, compute services, things like that. You could spin up all these things on your own hardware, which is really freaking cool. I don't know how else to say it. Now here, this slide, what I like is it shows that you can have your standard HCI servers here, right? These are the big, expensive, really focused on enterprise class clients. But now adding in the low spec, low cost edge servers, you're talking about like 4-core servers with, 32 or 64 gigs of memory. These are not high-end systems. These are like dev boxes. These are small footprint servers that really are like high-end desktops is really what you can use with this, which is pretty neat. I also like the fact that they offer disconnected operations now. I don't fully understand how this works. They weren't exactly clear. I was more focused and geeked out over the low spec, low cost. So I'll probably do another video later on down the road about the disconnected. But the neat part about this is having these lower end systems. If you don't need a ton of horsepower, but you need something, this is absolutely perfect. So this is great for your remote offices, your test and dev environments, things like that you don't need a big enterprise server or servers. If you just need one there, or maybe two, one primary, one backup, you have that option now with this. And, honestly, especially as cheap as these are, a couple grand, you've got a server ready to go. You just add your own storage, right? So with this, I want to scroll down here. We're going to skip a couple of these slides. But the beautiful part, since this is tied in with Arc, it allows you to manage all these resources that this hardware is capable of doing, like it's an Azure data center. So it gives you Azure on site, which I think is cool. So you can do everything from the Azure portal. You can use the standard APIs. You can use open source tools such as Terraform and things, or you can use Bicep or ARM templates to roll out. So again, infrastructure as code, but on site, using all of your standard Azure resources that you're used to, which again, is really freaking cool. And I think it is. I'm very much geeking out about it, if you can't tell. And the nice part about it is because it ties in so well, you're basically turning your computer on site into a node in Azure, because you can say, okay, I want the following nodes and things deployed, your network security groups, what NICs you have on your own hardware. And then you can span that across multiple servers if you want to for redundancy, just like in Azure, only you are now responsible for the hardware part. Again, you can use standard infrastructure as code language. There's tons of examples out here with these to roll out your own. This, I think, is a pretty neat feature too. One-click updates. So this allows you to update your systems and you can keep everything up and running. If you have more than one, obviously, it would require that. So it'll automatically move your resources from one node to another, allow that node to update, restart, and then it'll move your workloads back over and update your other one. So it gives you a hyper-convergence, basically your own private cloud, but using your standard Azure tooling. Then you can tie this into all your standard Azure metrics. So for all of your monitoring, so you can see, what CPU utilization's like, networking, storage, things like that. And you can build your own dashboards with this, and also alerts, and any metric that you can use pretty much within Azure, you'll be able to use with the Azure Local. It gives you the ability to run things like full-blown VMs, containers, a mix of both. It does not require, this is the cool thing, it does not require, like HCI did, local AD. You can use local accounts with this on the nodes. So you don't need to have a enterprise infrastructure to host this either. Everything is managed through Azure using Azure tokens, the vault to keep all the secrets, things like that. And it allows you to, as long as your hardware supports it, you can put in as big of a VM as you want and host things, like I said, of VMs, containers, AVD, and other resources. What this is showing is through Arc, it allows you to have that full integration within all the various Azure services. And then here's a slide talking about AVD, setting up your own AVD pools on your own hardware, which is nice. And of course, as with everything right now, they have AI built into it. But with this, if you have a preferred hardware vendor that you like to use, whether it's Lenovo, HP, Supermicro, what have you, all of the major vendors have compatibility with Azure Local. Heck, you can buy servers off of eBay right now that are compatible with this, as long as they're not too old. You want a more recent, more up-to-date server. So again, this adds a new perspective even to like home labs if you're wanting to learn Azure and save a little bit of money. And if you're wanting to do things with like GPUs, like let's say you want to give yourself a nice VM with a GPU, or maybe set up your own language learning model setup for your own AI testing, you can integrate your GPU with this as well. The specs for these is, again, what I really got excited about. So you only need one machine now. Just one, that's it. If you have a teeny little fanless server, you can do it. If you only need one disk, you only need 1 gig of Ethernet. Does not require Active Directory. Really, the only thing is it needs to be Windows Server certified, which pretty much most hardware is nowadays. Even some high-end desktops you can do it, but they're giving examples like the Supermicro fanless server or the HP micro server or the ThinkEdge. All of these are low-cost, very small footprint machines and give you a much lower cost of barrier to entry with this. Now, there's a couple things that it points out here that I want to show. With Azure Local, the reduced requirements allowed are up to maximum of 3 node cluster. So if you set up a cluster, you can only have up to 3 HP microservers, for example. Now you can mix and match too. You don't have to have all the same. I'm just saying that 3 is the 3. Now that SSD, that excludes the OS boot disk. So really it requires 2 disks internally. One for the OS to boot from and one for storage. Obviously it has to support Hyper-V, because really when you're installing the Azure Local on your hardware, I mean, we all know it's a stripped down version of Windows Server that's really being installed. So it has to be able to support Hyper-V, since that's what all Azure runs off of, is the Hyper-V virtualization. And then what it points out here in this last footnote here, there's the AD requirements. It's in preview right now, but it's coming in 2025 for full production. So right now you got it in preview mode for testing. They don't recommend production environments, but it's going to be coming out here very, very soon, which is pretty exciting. Now this demo here, we'll put this link down in the notes where he shows with a couple of HP microservers how easy it is to be able to set up Azure Local on a couple low-end servers. It's a cool video. It's definitely worth a watch, because he shows you and walks you through things like simply plugging in a USB drive and you're onboarding that server. So rollout of this can be really, really simple. So if you're a sysadmin and you've got 30 stores that you want to roll this out to, and you got 30 servers you need to do, well, all you need to do is USB boot or Pixie boot, really. You could probably set up a Pixie, which would be even easier, and to download the image, install it, onboard it. You can automate the whole thing, which makes the rollout of this, much, much easier. Now, here it's talking about the Azure disconnected. And like I said, I'm not as familiar with this. There's some things that you're really limited. So the AI Copilot, you're not going to have Defender. You're not going to be able to do AVD, but you can set up things such as your key vaults and Kubernetes, VMs. You can roll out using ARM templates, things like that on Azure Local disconnected, which is nice. And what it'll do is it'll give you a disconnected portal that allows you to connect to these machines. Obviously, it's disconnected, so you're going to have to also have like an IPv4 VM to be able to access these, or some other way on site to access them. But it's nice that they offer this disconnected provision. All right, let's jump down here. So one thing it's talking about here is you have all the standard Azure tooling. So your management tools allows you things like VM isolation, which is part of Hyper-V. You have all your privileged access like JIT, just in time, PAM, JA, etc. You have network security groups. You have your policies that you can apply. You can do zero trust. So you have your trusted boot, cryptography, code signing, hardened defaults. You have BitLocker. You do want TPM 2.0 on these servers. That's a requirement. And you're going to have all your standard requirements that you would have, like even in Azure for your security, where it will automatically apply all these features, just like it's a node in the Azure infrastructure, which is good because now it gives you peace of mind knowing that things are not insecure by default, but they're very secure by default. Now, it still requires you to set things up properly. Two, doesn't make much sense to encrypt and have zero trust if your password is 1234, but it gives you all of these capabilities, just like, again, it's a resource in Azure. I know I'm saying that a lot, but honestly, they're really trying to build this to make it simple and standardized. I left this slide here. It's talking about the security aspect of it. Obviously, in this day and age, you do not want RDP exposed anywhere, so don't do it. But the beautiful part is, with this, it gives you NSGs. So if you're not familiar with network security groups, it allows you to have a simple traffic cop, essentially. I don't want to use the term firewall, but it can be that way in some aspect of the fact that NSGs are very basic, but it allows you to set up and say, okay, these two devices or this device and the internet can only talk over these protocols or to these IP addresses or on these ports. So it gives you some granularity control on what network traffic can communicate. So here in our example, it's denying outbound internet access, but it's allowing VM to VM communication. It says, okay, these two VNets are allowed to talk to each other. But this web server can access the internet. This one cannot. So, and that's what NSGs do. They're network traffic cops. That's probably the best way of explaining them, because they say, okay, your computer is only allowed to talk to this computer or that computer, or this network group can only talk to these network resources over here, etc. So it gives you some nice fine-grained controls to limit what networks can talk to each other. And that's separate from the VM. So even if you manage the firewall in the VM, your network security group is an added layer on top of that. So if something happens and your VM's firewall service turns off, all of a sudden your server firewall is gone. Cool. Network security groups is a better way of managing that traffic because it's separate from that server. It's on the hypervisor, and it's segregating your networks and your systems at the hypervisor level. So here's an example of a network security group where, okay, we're denying SSH, but we're allowing RDP, and we're denying everything outbound except for the certain app that we want to allow and logging. Essentially, like I said, it's a network traffic cop. It says, okay, you can go, but you can't. And it gives you things like trusted launch for VMs. So this is your boot's integrity. Make sure you got to have a TPM for this, obviously. Again, this is all coming in Q1 of 2025. Didn't mean to move that. So it's going to be happening more. There's a great demo. Again, I'm going to link this down in the description. So again, watch this. This is a great demo of it. It only takes a couple minutes. And here's the roadmap for Azure Local, where they're showing, okay, right now, here's where we're at, fall 2024 at the time of this video. But here in early 2025, a lot of fantastic features are going to be in for general rollout. They're going to be in GA, and most of the systems are going to be in place by fall of next year. So just in a year, you're going to have most of your features, and then there's going to be some refinement early 2026. Obviously, timelines can change. That's why they're saying down here, no guarantee, blah, 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 because the lawyers got to do their thing. But this is what they're planning on doing, which is pretty exciting. Now we're on the bad part. This is the thing that I don't like about Azure Local. And quite frankly, Azure Local is getting a lot of heat online for this in the social media outlets. And that is, there is a cost. Now, I understand a lot of this requires development time, and Microsoft's invested a lot of money into these systems. I wish, though, I get if they have to attack on a price, I wish it was lower. $10 per core just seems excessive. I mean, yeah, you're not charged for the hyperthreads, but still, a lot of systems are like 8 to 16 cores, even the lower end, and that racks up your cost by quite a bit. On top of that, you're being billed for all of your metrics and stuff that you're running. I mean, you're not being charged for other things like your VMs and stuff that you're running locally, which is great. I don't know. I hope Microsoft changes this. And now this is just for the connected machines, this 10 USD. I almost forgot down here. I like the little disclaimers. Disconnected, his pricing has not been announced yet. But again, that $10 per core per month. I mean, if it was $10 a core per year, I don't know. They're basically charging you to run your own hardware, which I don't care for. I get why they do it. I understand it, but yeah, I'm not a fan of this either, but Microsoft's going to do their thing. Just know that depending on, make sure you budget this in is really the important thing when you're doing your costs of $10 per physical core machine. So I say per machine, but it's basically an aggregate. So if you have 2 8-core machines, you're going to be charged $160 a month. Multiply that by 12 and the cost racks up pretty quickly. But again, you have all the nice abilities of Azure locally, which is nice. So in the last slide here, they've got a couple of FAQs here. So Azure Local, is it managed by Microsoft? Nope, you're managing it. So you get to manage the updates, you get to manage the system, things like that. They're just providing the platform and access. Azure Stack HCI is just becoming Azure Local, really. I think they're ditching the HCI verbiage for local. So it's a rebranding. And it's all part of Azure Arc, which is nice. Again, there's all kinds of information at the Azure Local site. Again, I'll link this down in the description below. So that is the end of the slide deck that Microsoft has provided in the announcement. But so know this, you can run Azure Local on just about any hardware now. Just look at the hardware compatibility list, and there is a big, large variety of hardware that you can use for your Azure Local instance. Just keep in mind, there is a cost, $10 per physical core. And that can go up that cost pretty quickly. But it also gives you a much cheaper, alternatively, much cheaper way to roll out Azure services. So again, it's great for testing. It's great for workloads that you want or need locally and still be able to manage this more easily. So I could see some home environments actually really implementing this. I've thought about rolling this out in my own home lab on my low-end servers just to tinker with it and just see how well it works. But yeah, know that it's there. Know that it's coming in full GA early next year. Right now it's in preview, so you can tinker with it through the Azure portal. It's still called Azure HCI in the portal, but it's going to be rebranded to a local, obviously, at some point here soon, probably when it comes GA. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And we're going to have a lot more videos on Azure stuff because honestly, you got to learn cloud anymore if you want to be a sysadmin in 2024, 2025. This is just the way our industry is changing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.